this bag of ego that we carry around with us, and that's our identity. So learning to take that spiritual ego bag and put it in our pocket.
So I really like this idea that we can shift from a spiritual identity based on our doing to a spiritual identity based on our being. Hey there, Diocese of the Rio Grande. I know you remember Jan Hosea. Jan, it is wonderful to be with you here today at St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
It's wonderful to have you here, Bishop.
And you have been priest in charge here for how long? Remind me.
I'm starting my 4th year.
All right, wonderful. So tell us a little bit about St. Mary's and what it's like ministering here. What's the character and nature of the congregation? What you all been working on?
It's a wonderful congregation, a congregation that was formed out of 2 other congregations in the late 80s, St. Matthew's and St. Aidan's, who came to the point where, gosh, a lot of us are right now, of knowing that our congregations were dwindling and knowing that we needed to blend them together. So the original sanctuary is St. Aidan's Sanctuary. St. Matthew's decided to sell, and they took the money from the sale of St. Matthew's and built the parish hall, so that when the 2 congregations came together, I think they did a really smart thing. They renamed.
Perfect.
So they didn't hold, well, you're in my church. They came together as St. Mary's, which
and it wasn't just St. Aidan's and St. Matthew's either. It was a new identity for both.
It was. And both of them owned a piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm. Literally.
Literally. Yeah. With St. Matthew's money going to build the parish hall, and St. Aidan's that had the original sanctuary. So St. Mary's has been going since, actually the first service was in 1989. And many of you who are old like me remember Father Tarbell, who was one of the first rectors here in making that happen. And Father Tarbell is a wonderful, wonderful mentor of mine, who died just, I think, 2 days short of his 100th birthday.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
He was
Long
and
life.
his birthday's right around Christmas, and we did a service Christmas Day, and praised him, and he died a couple days later. Yes.
He went on to his great reward.
He did.
Yeah.
So this is Tarbell Hall.
Wonderful. I had not made that connection. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And so today, tell us about the congregation today, because tonight we're going to be having confirmation. The congregation's coming together. Tell us about the character of St. Mary's today.
Everybody would say that St. Mary's was the most conservative congregation in the diocese. That's not true. St. Mary's character is that of being opening and welcoming to anyone and everyone, and you can certainly see it by our congregation today, of who we are and how we behave and how we welcome anybody and everybody in. Last Sunday we had 59 people at present. It'll be small tonight, but that's okay. It'll be mighty.
Yep.
Yes, we're an older congregation, and we keep attracting older people, and I think a lot of it, Bishop, is because we've proven over the years that we know how to take care of older people.
Yeah. And
we have a great pastoral care team that does wonderful work in doing that. And we pay attention to individuals, and that's beginning to get known.
Yeah. Tell us about the pastoral care team, how it was organized, how it runs, who's on it, how do you train the people, what do they do?
Well, the pastoral care team are essentially, the core are the lay Eucharistic visitors, who have been doing, one of whom has been doing this for probably 25 years here at St. Mary's. And we recruit new people to come in and help with that. But beyond pastoral care, we also have people that make phone calls to folks. We encourage each other to look around. Y'all know what I'm talking about. When you come in, you can look at the congregation, see where everybody's seating, and you can tell that somebody's not here if they're not sitting in that pew.
Yep.
So we pretty much encourage people to be mindful of that, and then to make those phone calls and follow up with folks. Pick up the guys that can't quite make it to church but might come to the Brotherhood lunch on Wednesday, and the women who are really shy about coming after their husband has passed, to invite them to come with you to the Wednesday service. And do that. This is also another thing that we've done that our elders seem to like. It's our pet memorial garden, where people can bring cremains of their pets and put in the ground here, or they can just buy a little remembrance and put in the ground here for a particular animal of theirs that they love and want to have a place. I had one couple, they were so sweet. They said, "You mean we can have our puppies at St. Mary's?" And we went, "Yes, you can. They can be at my church."
Yeah, that's lovely. And you've redone the garden here. I think you were reminding me it was a circle the last time we were here.
It was a circle
really
and in pretty tight around the tree, and the tree busted out the circle. So we made it into a square and a little bigger, and we'll gussy it up this spring and make it really pretty.
It's wonderful. And this tree is just such an amazing, it's about getting ready to bloom. Gorgeous.
It is. And St. Francis, of course, looks over everything.
Yeah. Well, now we were talking earlier about a course you've taken and a program you're about to start here to minister to people who are aging and to help with their spiritual life. Tell us a little bit about that program and what it is.
It's a 6 weeks program where we will delve into elderhood. There's young youthhood, there's
childhood,
right? Yep. There's adolescence, adulthood, and then there's elderhood, which we found out starts at 65. So if you didn't think you were old, you're old if you're 65.
You're an elder.
You're an elder.
We need your wisdom.
We need your wisdom. The other thing we know is that people begin to change, especially as they retire, because their identity has been within their workplace and who they are. We were talking about how you introduce yourself to somebody. Well, tell me what you do.
Right.
The next question to ask is, tell me who you are. Tell me how you be.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard transition for most of us about who are we really and how can we deepen our spiritual relationship with God and figure out what is mine to do in these last years of life.
I love that. I love that. One of the questions I've started to ask people instead of what do you do for a living or that kind of thing is what do you do when you're not working? Because if you're at home raising kids or if you're in between jobs or given the economy today, people do not necessarily identify with one thing. I'm a mechanical engineer or whatever. It could be that people have multiple vocations in life. And yet we do, I think, tend to define ourselves by the stuff we do that we get paid to do or the stuff that we've studied or trained to do. So I really like this idea that we can shift from a spiritual identity based on our doing to a spiritual identity based on our being. That sounds really profound to me.
So what we gather as adults in the workaday world are filling up our ego bag. And then we have this bag of ego that we carry around with us, and that's our identity. So learning to take that spiritual ego bag and put it in our pocket and become wisdom, which is the opposite of ego. It is the absorption of all that we have been and the playing down of ego so that we can hear you and see you and absorb God's greatness all around us in the people we meet, in where we walk, in what we do. And that is how we pretty much, the theories have shown that that's how we identify somebody who is wise.
That I can really see that if I identify as the person who then does this or this or this, a couple of wonderful things happen. First of all, I could fail and my identity is not on the line. I could make a mistake and my identity is not on the line. My team could lose and my identity is not on the line because I'm a person who then does these things or hangs out with these people or, is interested in these things. But when we fuse our identity to what we do, then, oh my gosh, every failure, every mistake is my core being being threatened, So I can really see how we identify wisdom as the person who knows who they are fundamentally. We talk about this a lot in discernment, vocation being who am I called to be and what am I called to do, but not who am I called to do? It's not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And
it's that spiritual being that is walking on this earth that's absorbing God and seeing God in everything, and being able to pull that in. And there's more contemplative time. And for me, who I'm not a contemplative, learning to be more contemplative and to really listen and to see and absorb is a learning experience.
Which is so countercultural in our 24/7 news cycles, in our social media, in our every time you go into a place to eat, there's all 700 screens showing you different pieces of information. Having the wisdom to kind of step back, take time to contemplate, to pray, to meditate, to just think and be.
And the what's in it for me is we studied Anna and Simeon in the temple today in our class, and it allows us to be Simeon, who says, "Oh, thank you, Lord, I can now die because I've seen the person that I thought I was going to see before I die." So I think it's encouraging us to look at our spiritual bucket list.
I like that.
And to say, okay, I've now shifted from doing so much to being comfortable with myself, comfortable with God's creation, and feeling God around me all the time, consciously, and not having to work at that.
Yeah. I was talking with someone kind of on a similar vein who was talking about counting holidays as a way of focusing one's attention. Like if we're thinking about going through Thanksgiving dinner, we're often thinking about the meal and who's coming and cleaning the house and the vacuuming and all that kind of busyness, right? What am I going to serve? Is the turkey going to get done? All that kind of stuff. And the invitation that I wish I could remember who it was. The invitation this person was saying was, if you're in your 50s or in your 60s, you might have 25 or 30 more of those. So if you think about, like, I get to sit at this table 20 times, then the focus can shift to, this is one of those 20 times. This next 6 hours, I want to think about, what does this mean to me this time?
And who am I to that person?
And who am I? And how do I want this to be? Not to try to put extra pressure on, now we got to really run the vacuum and make sure everything's perfect. It's not that kind of a, old school Martha Stewart kind of perfection, but
Martha and Mary.
It is rather valuing the sense of awareness of time, and in that Simeon kind of a way to say, what a blessing for me to be here. And I think about Anna, who was in the temple all the time. Lots of people saw that particular family come through the temple with their little baby, right? But she was watching enough to know and to take the time. That's wisdom that the elder years can really bring to the fore.
And Anna, I think, was able to do that because she's the first real homeless person we see in the Bible. She didn't have a male to take care of her, so she literally lived in the temple. And when we look at the word contemplative, it's con and temple put together. So Anna embodies the contemplative.
Being together with the temple, right? Yeah, that's wonderful. And so this the course you've been doing is training you to lead a group on elderhood and the spiritual journey of elderhood.
Exactly.
You're going to test it out here at St. Mary's?
We are. Probably after Easter on Saturdays, we'll set up a time to do it, and then I'll learn where all the places are that we goofed up and how we can make it better and open it up to more people to come.
Yeah, because I want to circle back around in the summer or in the early fall and see if you would offer that in a way
Absolutely.
that the diocese might join in, because I think there's a lot of folks who could really benefit from that. And it also fits in with our diocesan emphasis on discernment and vocation, helping people see the ways in which the lives that you're living today are, you don't have to wait for a spiritual journey. You don't have to have a collar around your neck to be a faithful person. The goal for Jesus for all of us is, how do I follow now on my spiritual journey? And this is a wonderful opportunity.
And as we all know in discernment, when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. And we don't have any choice but to say yes to elderhood. So how are we going to turn that and have it be okay to say no to some things? And I think we've earned the right to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And probably have the wisdom enough to choose.
There
right?
you go.
To not feel like, oh gosh, I got to do everything, but instead to say, no, I know enough to know I'm going to pick that instead of this, because that's where my heart is.
Exactly. To fulfill that heart thing that Simeon had, and to live towards that.
Tell me more about the spiritual bucket list and how you envision and think about that. I love that idea.
Well, it just kind of came to me this evening when I was finishing the class that maybe we should go really deep and say, what is going to fill our spirit? Maybe it's a trip to the Holy Land, to walk in those footsteps. Maybe it's spending more time, investing more time in God's creation. Now that we can make those choices.
Right. That sometimes the financial reality is more stable, our needs are less. And so we might have a chance to be able to really focus on, maybe I do want to read all of Jane Austen. I've never had a chance to do that. There's one of my favorite retired clergy stories is a dear friend of mine in North Carolina. I had a meeting with him when he was about to retire from the priesthood, and I said, so what are you going to do? He'd been a priest his entire life and served well after, 72 made him retire. And he said, I'm going to be at the pool hall. And I said, the what? And he said, I've always wanted to learn how to shoot pool. I've never really had time because it's always in the evenings, and Saturday nights are when, there are tournaments and things. So I'm going to learn how to shoot pool, and you're going to find me at the pool hall. And then I followed up I saw him again like 2 or 3 years later. And I said, how you doing? He goes, I love it. I absolutely love it. So there are, I think we all have these yearnings for things that we wish we might have tried, and time is precious. And there can be in elderhood all kinds of opportunities to spend time with folks in a different way, in a deeper, more kind of pastime way, rather than the frenetic kind of hustle and bustle that the professional life sometimes requires, or raising kids sometimes requires.
Yeah, I think having a routine can shift, and we can say, I'm not going to get up at 6 o'clock this morning.
Because I don't need to do that.
I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to lay here and be with Jesus, just looking right outside my window.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's marvelous. Well, so I want to bring this part of the conversation to a close.
We'll let you know when we're going to have it open.
Yeah, so let us know. We'll circle back around and watch this space for more information about how to join. What's the title of the course?
The Journey Ahead, Spirituality in Later Life.
All right. So look for The Journey Ahead, Spiritual Reality in Later Life coming up soon. And I look forward to hearing more about that.
Me too.
So thank you, Jan, for that ministry.
Thank you.